This building. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I am Paul David, founder and CEO of Literal Humans and your host. And I'm joined today by Eric Chang, co-founder and CEO at Claira, someone I got a chance to meet in person, which happens rarely these days. We got a chance to connect in New York a couple weeks ago. So good to have you on the pod, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks for having me and excited for the conversation going forward.
Yeah, we had a great conversation at Soho House, and I was like, we got to get you on the pod. I want our audience to hear about the good work you're doing at Claira. By way of introduction, Claira is an advanced financial technology platform backed by industry giants, small players you might not have heard of. They don't have your money for sure, like Citi and Barclays, specializing in transforming complex legal and financial documents into actionable data. Eric is a CFA charter holder. Can you explain what that means for our audience? What is that?
But so you have for that, you're really special. It's a program that provides training around what it means to be an investor and a financial analyst. So it really applicable for a lot of what we're trying to do in terms of underwriting and analyzing investment opportunities.
Nice. So Eric's a charter holder, CFA charter holder. He's got a formidable background in institutional finance, having held senior roles at, again, small firms, BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, AQR Capital Management, from managing multi-billion-dollar portfolios to leading AI product development for over 25,000 financial advisors. Eric has consistently sat at the intersection of deep market expertise and cutting-edge technology. So he's going to make a great guess is what all that means. Jumping right in, Eric, this first question, we like to have our guests, explain the sort of landscape that they're working in. So this issue of unstructured data, would love for you to illuminate for the audience how Claira is solving this issue, this crisis of unstructured data in institutional finance.
Yeah. So we specifically focus on private markets. So private markets is really investment opportunities that are, particularly in the institutional space, not disseminated necessarily broadly to every investor. Usually, an investment bank or someone like that will be running the process of raising money for this could be for a private company or venture capital or private equity, which are oftentimes the bigger asset class in this space. And so any investors that are interested have to go through a process of signing a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, to be able to access the information that the company is providing, given that it is a private company. And because of this process, that information transfer and discussion is very, very document heavy. It's presentations, Excel models, and so on that are put together, oftentimes emailed or maybe shared through what's called like a virtual data room, which is essentially a fancy word for like a Dropbox or a box account that you send this information. And then on the investment side, you're like going through all this documentation to evaluate the opportunity, to decide if you want to participate or not. And so it's a very antiquated manual process. And what's particularly unique about this asset class and investment in even for the large firms like, the small, BlackRocks and Blackstone and, the world, the investment process is still, I'd almost say tribunal. It's not too different than if you were in a tribe and it's kind of like a court case, like someone did something wrong or like something happened in the tribe and, you get someone that's done a little bit of investigation, gone through all the information, comes with a proposal to the chief and his or her advisors and be like, here's what I put together. Do you want to say yes or no to this thing? That's actually kind of how private market investment works. Like they call it kind of fancy things like, they put together an investment memo, they present it in an investment committee that goes through a diligence process and so on. But it's really at the end of it, a certain number of people sitting in a room or on a Zoom call reading a presentation or a deck that the analyst has put together on opportunity, and then based off of that, deciding yes or no. It's just not very scalable. It's not very sensible. There's no learning or building of 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 that investment process. And so that's what we're really trying to fix is how do we take this traditionally very antiquated, traditionally very because of this information transfer, very document heavy, very manual process, and digitize it, make it much more data centric. And obviously, with the advent of AI, bring AI into that process as well, but really allow this transformation to happen for this private market asset class. And that's what we're trying to do.
So it strikes me that the sort of, promised land mountaintop you're trying to get to is deal intelligence, right? Like that's what's
Yep.
buried in the analysis and the insights that one would get from these documents, right? And that's the specific problem you're trying to solve for major banks and asset managers. You've got backing from major players like Citi and Barclays. Would love to kind of understand, like, if there was a moment when you realized that these legacy systems were no longer fit for purpose being deal intelligence, and how does your approach sort of differ from these standard legacy tools that we see in the market today?
So I'd say like the aha moment. So I started my career in this at BlackRock, looking at a lot of these alternative asset, private assets. It was the process that was described. I'd get, you get a dump of an Excel file, you get some, Word documents or PDF files, not even Word documents, and you're like modeling the deal, you're showing it to like that. I started in 2008, 2009, 2015. Like there's been zero change. And so like it's unbelievable in that the transformation we saw over the last 10, 15 years. So it's just like, okay, like this process really needs some some change. And I having been at like large firms, it definitely is also understandable, right? It's like your main job at a Citi, Barclays, at an Ares, or these large investment, your job is to get deals done. Your job is not to reinvent the deal process. And so the economic incentive and the entire organization structure at these institutions, like they don't make money banking the process, but they make money by doing more investments or doing more deals. So like it's just really, really hard, I think, structurally for these firms to make that change. And, their edge is their distribution and the deals that they see and the advice that they have and the knowledge and expertise that they're able to bring, not a data platform that helps organize this information, right? And so I think it's just um really well suited for someone that like understands the process, and that, our team is all like former bankers and investment professionals that alongside with technology people to like deliver this to like help the large institutions go through this transformation. And I think where we really differ than a lot of the other tools that are approaching this is taking a data first approach to this process. And rather than especially particularly with AI today, in terms like, oh, like AI can AI is amazing at accomplishing tasks, amazing at, the agents can do a bunch of stuff, but it all relies on the fact that you already have the data accessible to AI. AI doesn't necessarily generate data or help connect data. It's much more about analyzing, allowing a query and drive information off the data. So I think where we're really different than others is, particularly given our institutional background and backing, and being able to take more of that holistic approach of saying the core part of Clara as a platform is really first stitching together all that data together. And the agents run on top that allow you to do a lot more with it, leverage that data, keep it up to date easier. But really the core differentiation of the platform is this knowledge deal, we'll call it deal intelligence layer. That's really about stitching all that together, giving investment firms and banks really a full, complete picture of that traditional tribunal investment process.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like a really difficult task in terms of like going to from zero to one. As a fintech, kind of disrupting Wall Street. Institution that does not like to be disrupted, as we've seen. It strikes me that there's like a talent piece, there's a product piece, and they're interwoven. You need to find talent that kind of understands complex financial math and also maybe advanced machine learning and kind of, but there's a lot of knowledge and mindset that's needed here. You're also in the deal intelligence space, so like would love to understand your strategy for kind of staying ahead from a talent and product perspective, going up against these larger tech giants and financial giants in your space.
Yeah, I think for us, it really comes to focus and specialization, right? Like, even finance is huge, but even within institutional finance, it's different asset classes, different roles. There's the buy side, there's the sell side. Especially for someone that maybe haven't worked through the industry, it kind of all sounds similar. You're like, what do you mean you're buying and selling, right? And so, but and there's there is commonality, but like the same time, I think for us compared to like larger players where they're maybe trying to solve a bigger problem, we're very much focused on, private market assets. So it's like private credit, private equity, commercial real estate. So very team focused on and very deliberate in terms of the challenge that we're solving here around the deal team and their deal investment process and trying to not really necessarily make them faster, but really make them better at what they do and giving them more information or the more information that they have, ability to process more information. And so, like, if we try to compete in like 8 different areas, or then it's definitely a much harder challenge. If you're able to really stay focused and understand where you play and the problem set that you're really trying to solve and who, your key target is, then I think you know, that sort of drives all the decisions going forward in terms of talent, in terms of product, but also, the human nature of this as well, right? As you say, it's not just an organizational change, but it's also, human behavior change. I've done deals this way for the last 25 years. Like, what is this like AI thing gonna? And so, like, we've been very deliberate about thinking about how do we bring AI to the user rather than having the users come to AI and come to data. And, LLMs and so on has been very helpful in that delivery mechanism. But fundamentally, that change management, that transition process is still going to take a literal human to sit in the room with them that understands what they do to be able to help them go through that change.
Like what strikes me is like you're trying to move from like, there's a lot of specialized tools out there, and you want to be kind of industry standard. You want to be infrastructure for financial deal intelligence, right? So, what are the biggest roadblocks to that, and how do you balance this need to kind of, deliver solutions for clients that are somewhat bespoke, but also build a scalable, standardized product, in the SaaS space? Like I know there's that tension there all the time. You want to be responsive, have your roadmap, but also you can't be everything to everyone all the time. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, it definitely is tricky. I think part of it is going back a little bit to that focus area of like, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then what not just like but like and this is kind of like having been an investor and like having close collaboration, my co-founder is the CTO coming, out of Stanford area, like saying day one, okay, like this is the end state that we want to be. And yeah, there might be intermediary steps, but let's design the platform in a scalable, flexible way that it can take us there and we're not going to be accruing a ton of technical debt to get there. Every firm will have the nuances different, but the overall process is very similar. So sort of playing off of that gives us that scalability and ability to focus. And also like, part of it's also from our side, focusing on the asset classes that we do is where deliberate in the sense that there's commonality in what they do that allows us to really tackle that challenge.
Selling to these tier one financial institutions is notoriously slow. You've got some big names under your belt already. How do you navigate this incumbents trap that tends to happen where large firms are hesitant to replace legacy infrastructure? And how does that just, as part of your motion, how does that factor into your larger growth strategy?
Yeah, selling to institutions is kind of funny in the sense that there are a lot you think, oh, it's like BlackRock or Barclays, like there's like large organization. But actually, like if you bear it down at the same time, it's also you're selling it to still a person there and finding that key stakeholder, understanding who your key stakeholder is and making it as easy as possible for him or her to pick up the tool and get value and show value internally. So although you feel like you're dealing with the organization, like at the same time, you're still also like dealing with people. And so when we think about development of the platform, how do we make it as easy for people to get started? Yes, there's like this large infrastructure piece and transformation that can come. Let's, not boil the ocean, sort of like start step by step. How do we just make it really easy to get started? And for us, it's like for Clara, it's, we've, made it such that it's like hiring an executive assistant. You need someone to help you track your deals, log all the information, keep up to date. You just email Clara and it tracks everything. You ask it questions, it does it. You ask it to update a status. And like and then it connects and saves down everything you'd want. And then we were like, "Hey, Claire, didn't we look at this something like 6 months ago?" Oh yeah, nice thing about computer, it has a perfect memory, so it actually does remember versus and Claire never leaves. So that's also a big operational risk for investment firms. So, but that then makes it very easy for firms to get started. But just by doing that nature and interacting with this executive assistant or deal assistant, you're now naturally building this data layer, and you're naturally making this transition about where your data lives and sits. And then from there, you like can drive enterprise level infrastructure change, but all starts with just the few people that are trying to get deals done. Now being able to have a deal assistant that they email makes it super easy, um, and makes that transition much easier.
Yeah.
That's like been a really big game changer for us.
I love the tagline, Clara never leaves, like, especially in a profession
Yeah,
where people are notorious for just working crazy hours. Like Clara never leaves. Like, you could,
no, really,
just
yeah.
get Clara in there. Yeah.
Doesn't go to sleep either. If that's that's
Yeah. I'm curious about, you've managed, 1.5 trillion in assets, or managed risk on over 1.5 trillion in assets. Obviously that level of responsibility will kind of shape your personal appetite for risk as an entrepreneur. I'm super curious how you use that investor brain to kind of identify, growth channels and strategies to make Clara scalable. I'm fascinated by how people come into being marketers and growth strategists, and especially in your role as an investor. So we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, whether investor, like, I guess fundamentally, the amount itself doesn't necessarily change the framework of you actually don't get rewarded unless you take risks. Like, there's no free lunch, even, especially in the investment world. And it's like much more metric driven in finance, but that's true in life. If you don't take risk, you're not going to get reward. If you don't push yourself, you're not. And so, and the big part, and if you accept that and you have that framework in mind, and from an investment standpoint, it's then, well, I have to take risks to get return, and that's the business that you're in as an investor. So then it's all about understanding your risk and measuring the risk and evaluating that against the potential reward. And so, I don't think that changes when you're running a business. It's the same. Every decision you make, every product you launch, every marketing thing that you do, there's risks to it. It might not work, but then there's also a potential reward that comes with it. And so the frameworks then also very much is like, how do we, a little bit obviously data heavy in terms of my background and what we're doing. Like, how do we collect data, or how do we understand the risk as best as possible? How do we understand the reward as best as possible? Not everything, finance is nice because like everything is numbers and you can measure it very easily. In the real world, it's to the best that you can measure it, understand it, and try and cover all the things like. And then it's selling evaluation. Is this the right risk reward? Is this the right trade off? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And that same mindset, I think, whether it's an investment or running a business, very much still stays true to how I think about decisions going forward.
Yeah, I love what you said before about, like, even in a B2B context, like really understanding your buyer and like their position as a human. And that's something we really encourage. Is we sort of say that, B2B is actually more emotional than B2C. This person's professional reputation and their job and like their livelihood is on the line. And you have to really lean into that in terms of how you message to them and engage with them. So I love that you called that out.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I think also too, we have some clients who they need to think like they're investors. We're working with a client right now, actually in New York, who, they're trying to show up for 150 investors and all the places that they read news and, email sequences and, LinkedIn. And we're trying to help them be ubiquitous, is what they said. They want to be ubiquitous for their investors to a point, to the right point. So how do
Yeah.
you really, think with that investor brain as a founder, as an entrepreneur? So I love that.
No, that's really well, yeah. And like on that risk reward, it's like it's collecting data, whether it's like physical data or like you say news and different like,
Yeah,
human. The one thing working in AI has also been eye opening in terms of how amazing the human brain is. The amount of
totally.
connections that you can make, things that you might like, the amount of data and information in some ways that like a simple decision or like, even just like a relationship, like what is this person like? What is like, what are they mood are they in? Or like, what kind of like all that thing kinda come into play, whether consciously or subconsciously. It's the human brain's it's very amazing.
Yeah. I love that you
More
said that too, because I
respect.
think I think we take it the other way. Where what is it showing you about your own creativity and
Exactly.
nonlinear thinking? And yeah, I love that. That's a great perspective. Need more of that.
Yeah.
Quick fire questions. I'm going to hold you to this. So
Yeah.
first thought that comes to your mind, it's like, yeah, make it a quick choppy response. If you could found another tech startup after Claira, after it's super successful, you exited, all that great stuff, what would it be?
That's hard. I'm like full on still thinking about Clara. I would say, I guess my first thought would be, it like the one thing that's like really helped me here is like, if you're starting, is really what is the user group that you really resonate with and want to help, right? Like when you're going to be selling, whether your company or the products, and so you want to be selling people that you care about. And so I just have to find another group that I really care about and start from there.
Yeah, totally. That's great advice, actually. That's good answer to that question. Not non-linear. Tech invention that makes you the most excited and tech invention that makes you the most concerned. Quick fire.
I'd be most excited about, I think there's like a lot of people working on robotics, someone that can fold my laundry and put away my talk about menial tasks that AI should take over. That's like that types of like clean up after my daughter. That'd be great. Most concern proliferation of like being able to use AI to fake stuff. It's like what's real, what's made up, identity stealing. I think there's still so many things that people haven't even thought about with that. And that definitely, AI is a tool. It could be used for good and bad. A little bit worried about where we could go with it there.
Yeah, I feel on that. I'm like, why am I still scooping my cat's poo out of the, like, can please someone just create an AI that just
Exactly.
like, come on, guys, please.
Seriously, right? Like, yeah.
Just like, it's disrespectful at this point. Who's a literal human who's been integral to your career journey that you want to shout out?
I'll take a cheat on this one. I think my co-founder and CTO, we've been on this journey, co-fight a few years together. Federico Polakov has been an amazing partner. We wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be here without his help and support and partnerships. Shout out to him.
Shout out to Federico. What a fantastic name, by the way. It's like a spy's name. Like, that's incredible. Federico Polakov. Wow. Well done. Wow. What's an inspirational quote that stuck with you in your journey in tech?
I don't know the exact quote, but I think a lot of people, like Steve Jobs, gave this like commencement speech about something about like connecting the dots, and that's definitely true for like I was an engineer out of school. I did investments in private assets. I went to a quant hedge fund that learned about modeling at AQR. Did like none of these are like a traditional linear path to a certain career. And I've just always pursued something that I found intellectually stimulating and challenging and interesting. And now in this role as, a CEO, like everything's sort of like really helped. Like modeling, it's like been really useful. Like private assets been really useful. Selling the clients and be able to help them with their strat, like that's been really like, and so definitely feel that way. Like if you're starting, like, don't worry too much about like, oh, I have to, like, am I picking something I'm gonna do for the next 25 years? Like, don't worry about it. Like, pick something that's challenging, going back to like pick a problem set or a client or somewhere that you would like to serve, because ultimately that's what you're trying to do when you're selling. You're serving and being a provider to the person that's buying something. And as long as you can stay passionate about that and you're learning and being uncomfortable, then life will take you to interesting places.
Yeah, I love that. Like I get the privilege of interviewing amazing folks like yourself every week, and that's the cross-cutting thing is like focus on a problem, focus on a group that you really want to help, and just invest in that, invest in serving. And I love that you're kind of bridging the gap between this like rigorous world of like sort of CFA, finance, and also the fast-paced world of like tech and AI. And I think it's a prime example of like how you're taking your domain expertise and then using that as a secret sauce to make the technology actually useful for the group that you're looking to serve in the real world. And
Exactly.
that's really cool to
Yeah.
see. So thank you so much for joining us, Eric. This has been awesome. Can you let our listeners know where they can learn more about Claira and on the interwebs?
Well, yeah, website, it's Claira.io, Claira.io, clarity with AI. So that's kind of that way to remember it.
Nice. And for our listeners, please give us a review, give us a 5-star rating so we can keep bringing fantastic guests like Eric Chang, the CEO of Claira, also co-founder. He's been a great, fantastic guest, and we're looking forward to having more conversations with him and his team. Eric, thanks for what you're doing with Claira. We're big fans of it and would love to stay in touch. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thanks so much.